By the end of this presentation, I hope that nobody posts a selfie on Instagram with at least thinking twice about what they're doing and how much data you're sharing with both the social media platform, with researchers, with advertisers, with people that you will never meet and have no idea what intentions they have. To begin talking about digital images, I think it helps to frame images as information. And visible light, just like the way that you transfer data over a Wi-Fi VLAN router, is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. The only difference is the protocol. And with visible images, you're working in 430 to 770 terahertz. And with Wi-Fi or VLAN, you're working at 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. But both of these are ways of transmitting or sharing information remotely. And what's important about images is that you don't need my consent or my cooperation to take a photo of me. Likewise, I don't have to ask you if I were to take a photo of everybody here. We can look at that portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, and we see the visible occupies one part of it, whereas microwave, or what we use to transmit data on our smartphones, just occupies a different part of that spectrum. So this presentation is mostly about faces, and one unique thing about your face is that you never leave home without it. If you have, then you have a significant problem. And what happens, because you never forget it, it's a ubiquitous identifier, a persistent identifier, that many companies have realized can be used for commercial activities, security activities. And what you see here is an example of a product called mFlow that's currently installed in airports, London Gatwick, Manchester. And what you see in this animated LED pattern, the way that that works is these cameras are mounted on the ceiling, and you look up, and you see this LED pattern spinning. But as soon as you look up, that's when it takes a photo of your face. And using just one photo, you're already enrolled into their facial recognition database. You can see a little bit of what they do. They're inferring your age, your gender, your ethnicity. They're tracking you around the airport to measure whether you're a preferred customer, whether you're flying economy, which lines you've been to, where you're dwelling in the airport. And this is a sector of the biometrics industry that's really in its beginning. And there's a lot of growth, and it's likely to see many more products like mFlow. I should say a little bit about how I got into all this, and it's through working as a photographer and doing a few projects in the counter-surveillance way of thinking about photography. And this example comes from a project from 7 years ago now called CV Dazzle, and it's looking at using a very low-cost way to break face detection. And what you see here is hair and makeup used to exploit a vulnerability in a certain face detection algorithm. And now the face on the left is detected, is visible to a computer vision algorithm. And the face on the right that you can see is not detected. What you see in this animation is a very slowed down version of how that algorithm works. Now you can look through the algorithm in a different way as a heat map, and you can see what parts of the image look like a face more or less. And what's important to realize is that there's no such thing as an absolute face. There are only face-like areas in an image. And there's always a person that has to decide at what point are we going to qualify that area as a face or not a face. So there's always human input into these algorithms. And the second project that I'll mention is looking at how to defeat thermal imaging. So in this example, it's using silver-plated fabric to shield against the thermal radiation emitted from your body, which is about 100 watts. And that would be useful to protect against, say, observation by military drone. You can see in this example, the collection has been designed to be especially provocative as an anti-drone burqa and as an anti-drone hijab. And now, a task for you is to look at this image and try to find the person wearing the anti-drone burqa. I'll tell you there are 4 people that you can see standing around the van, but there's one more person. Maybe you can see them because they're directly behind the van in the center. I'm going to play the video, and when there's motion, it'll be very obvious. Now you can see the person moving, and you can see their legs, which are highly visible. Now, somebody's going to walk out of the store, and this is in winter, so they're going to be very hot, like they're on fire. But after working on these projects, I realized these are only 2 specific examples of the way that digital imaging is being used and the types of technology that are looking at us. And what I want to talk about now is all the different things you can do with a very small amount of information, even 1 pixel. It's a very boring amount of information compared to an 8-megapixel camera on your smartphone. 1 pixel in grayscale has 256 values. If you were to watch every one of those, it would take you 4.2 minutes. Some of the values you can't see the difference between. Here are 2 very slightly different versions of gray. To a computer, they're completely different. And when I put the text on top of it, then you can see we now have 2 different shades of gray. So to a computer, these 256 different variables are very useful. I could take the Times New Roman font set and separate each character into 1 pixel and then write a sentence. It'd be very frustrating to try to read it, but to a computer, it would be fine, because you have 97% separation between all of those characters. Now, if you look at the letter M, you'll notice that it's quite a bit brighter than the other ones. What this means is there is the most separation for the letter M. Capital letter M is the most unique font character in the Times New Roman font set. Meaning, if the letter M were a face, it would be the most easy face to recognize. What if we go 1 pixel up in resolution, and we take each letter as 1 by 2 pixels? Now we have a word. If anybody can read that word, go ahead and say it. What I'm going to show you is a way that you can uncover what's written when people pixelate text and post it online. This is not a good idea if you don't want somebody to read it. If you do want somebody to read it, then go ahead and pixelate it and post it online. I'll be happy to download it into my samples folder and try my best at deciphering it. It's going to happen fast, but look in the upper left-hand corner, and you see the original text in pixelated form, and then the word on the right is the best guess. Very quickly, we discover that it says earnest. 2 by 6. So about 1 by 2 pixels per character. Computer program, no problem. We're able to decipher that text. But still, 1 by 2, that's pretty boring. Let's go to 2 by 2. So now we have 4 pixels. If you were to look at every combination at 2 by 2 in grayscale at 1 frame per second, it would take you 136 years. You can increase that to 10 frames per second, and now it would only take you 13.6 years. What about when we go up to 4 by 4, or just 16 pixels? There's so much information at 4 by 4 pixels that if you were to ask every single person on the planet to spend their entire life looking at this image, non-stop, they would never be able to look at every single combination at 4 by 4. Meaning 4 by 4 is a superhuman amount of information. It's beyond the perceptual capabilities of the entire human race. But 4 by 4 is small. Even 8 by 8 is small. So now we're tending towards infinity. And we're still in grayscale. Most images are color. So we have an enormous amount of information at a very small resolution compared to what you capture with your smartphone and post online. In fact, there's so much information in color that computer vision algorithms usually ignore it. So the first step in a lot of algorithms will be to reduce the amount of information and turn it into a grayscale image. So what can you do? 6 by 7, I could take a photo of everyone here and do facial recognition with about 95% accuracy. With an 8 by 8 pixel, I can build an image search engine and look for copyright, infringement, look for image similarity with what's called the perceptual hash. We go up to 14 by 14 or 196 pixels, and we're only at an 18% reduction in facial recognition performance compared to the original photos. Still at 196 pixels or 12 by 16, you can recognize what people are doing. Somebody walking down the street, somebody riding a bike, 2 people walking next to each other, 1 person standing still. Which brings up the question, if you're building a system to recognize and count pedestrians, do you really need to store HD footage? 576 pixels. This kind of defines the parameters of the human head. So a face detection algorithm can encode all the different ways a human head would appear in 576 pixels. Still, it's not very impressive. 40 by 40, this is all you need to do if you wanted to make a smartphone app and do facial analysis. Find Face is one app. The minimum amount of information they need, 40 by 40. Well, let's skip ahead to 100 by 100. Still, a relatively small amount of information. This is all the information you need to do facial recognition at scale, meaning Google and the NSA, because the NSA licenses some of their software from Google, a company called PitPat. 100 by 100, if you were to look at it in comparison to what you post online, it's about 2.5% of one Instagram photo. And I know there are larger resolution Instagram photos, so that number is an even smaller fraction. But now we get to the fun part. What can you do with that information? Here's a researcher looking at inferring criminality. So we take 2.5% of one Instagram photo. We can use that information to decide whether you're a criminal or not, based on things like the lip curvature, eye inner corner distance. And what this paper says is that if you look like a criminal, you're a criminal. Well, that sucks. If a criminal and you tend to look similar. This is an example of what could be called AI phrenology. It's problematic, and this paper was shredded on Twitter, but the authors recently posted a rebuttal and said, despite all the criticism, the work that we're doing is important, and there's value in it. And they're not alone. Here's another research project looking at inferring psychological attributes. So if we zoom in a little bit, we can see things like happiness, but intelligence. inferring someone's intelligence from 100 by 100 pixels, if you're trustworthy, and if you're weird. Another research paper looking at inferring your body mass index, basically judging whether you're overweight. And if you look at the bar graph on the right side, you can see the difference between human performance and the performance of the computer vision algorithm is very close. This is a paper that came out in 2017, in March, and the authors note in their conclusion potential problems with this for abuse, noting to limit the potential abuse while allowing others to replicate and build on our results, we only make our pre-trained models available to other researchers. Unfortunately, they're a little bit late to the unethical party because people have been doing that for years. Here's a post on Hacker News from 3 years ago where somebody was looking at targeting people who are overweight with their Facebook profile photo. Here's another paper that looks at kind of automating a beauty score, but also these other attributes, whether you're sweet, whether you're endearing, caring, cute, tender, or whether you're pompous, indifferent, pretentious. Again, based on 100 by 100 pixels. There's more. We can also predict what decision you're going to make. That's great from a consumer profiling perspective. And that's a paper from 2011. So there's sure to be more research and improvements in that area. This is a great story from a company called Jetpack, who uses hipster mustaches to predict hipster cafes where tourists would like to go for a cup of coffee. Or on the bottom, analyzing lipstick to predict where there might be a bar with single girls for guys to go visit. Or this paper that looks at the width of your mouth to predict whether you're going to be a good CEO or not. On the converse side, if you don't have a wide mouth, you'll do better as a CEO of an NGO. So what can you infer from just a very small amount of information posted on social media? Quite a lot. Identity, race, age, gender, sweet, cute, pretentious, economic behavior, criminality score, intelligence, sociability, kindness, emotional state, body mass index, mustache and lipstick data, and how well you do as a CEO. You look where these photos are coming from, it's all social media sites. Twitter, Instagram, these are what power the training of those algorithms. Social media sites and the images we post are the superfood of training AI. Now, you're probably thinking, why does this affect me? Why should I be concerned? Well, if you want to look ahead and look at people who really care about how information can be used, look at the BND or look at MI6. They're having problems hiring people because everybody has too much information on social media networks. So now everybody can be outed from their social media profile. There's too much information, even for the spy agencies, to know exactly what to do with. And I said 100 by 100 pixels. You can do a lot. But now here's a paper that came out this year that's using an 11 by 11 pixel image, and then using what's called a generative adversarial network to upscale that image. And what you see on the right is the 11 by 11 input image, the one that the researcher synthesized, and the original ground truth image on the bottom. Pretty good, 11 by 11 pixels. You can take that very small amount of data, one image, 11 by 11, upscale it, and create a 3D model of someone's head, approximately. There's a lot of research happening here. What I mean by approximately is this is what happens if you do it with Kanye West. Not exactly. Which brings up the question, as I mentioned, I'm approaching this originally from the perspective of a photographer, thinking about images as works of art, images as photographs, as documentation. Ask yourself, do you think this is still photography? In a way, these very small, structured representations of pixels, visual information, I think is more like a visual database. When you strip out the color and reduce the resolution, you still have enough information to capture people's biometrics, infer their psychological and emotional states, even at very low resolutions. So how much information have you posted online? How many pixels are there of you online? And what does it mean to share visual databases, to share pixels about each other? I think if we break it down to something very simple, just one pixel, begin to think about all the different possibilities that one pixel can represent. For example, you can write a sentence. You can tell a story just with one pixel. I'm going to leave you with something better, which is this word, borange. People say there's no word in the English language that rhymes with orange except borange. It's a made-up word, and not by myself. What's great about it is that it describes the process kind of iterating towards a better solution. Wearing makeup and wearing eccentric fashion maybe isn't the perfect solution, but maybe it's part of the process of iterating towards something better. Borange is borange. So I'll leave it here, and then we can do some Q&A. And I also want to mention that I'll be doing a workshop shortly after this, looking at how we classified ourselves, what it means to be looked at biometrically, and an interesting concept called the biometric zoo. You can determine where you exist relative to other people in a biometric zoo. So, thank you.
Thank you, Adam. So, any questions? If you have questions, I can throw this one to you. Okay, well, I have a lot of questions, so that's something. You told about so many things where data is collected, and I was just thinking, oh God, if someone puts all that data together, like they can almost know everything about me right now. The data is there. What do you think? Like, where is this bringing us? Like, what is going to be the future of that whole process?
Well, the future issues that we'll deal with is the ability to manipulate and control people at a large scale. So when you have concentrated information about people's psychological state, their behavior, locations, who they hang out with, and so on, then you can exert influence over them. And I think that's one of the dangers. We mentioned privacy a lot. I didn't mention it too much in this talk, but another way to think about privacy is information security. And in regards to images, there's a subcategory of visual information security.
Okay. So, any questions? I can do this. Yeah.
Hello. Do you think that having eccentric hair and makeup will actually be a fashion statement in the near future to conceal our identity and to reconnect with privacy?
I think it could be. I think there are situations where it works better. It's easier to do at a party than it is when you go to a bank. I've seen people use it at protests. I've seen it repurposed in popular culture, on TV shows, and I think what's important is that it might be a temporary way of thinking about a solution that leads to a better solution. Either we look to politicians to help improve legislation about regulating some of these technologies, or potentially we change the way that we appear if we're uncomfortable with allowing this much information to go out.
More questions?
Nicht so doll. You were talking about pictures that have 100 by 100 resolution. What is the coolest thing you can do with more than that? Or what could we do with like full-scale images? Or do we even have the processing power to compute those kind of images? Or is this basically the limit we are currently facing?
Yeah, interesting question to think about all the many things you could do at higher resolution. Well, there's ear recognition. So when you have more information, then you can do biometrics on subcategories of the face. You have to ask, what is a face? Where does it begin? Where does it end? When you have enough resolution, then you can begin looking at skin texture. You can look at wrinkles in the forehead, eyebrows, hair, pupils, on and on and on. So it's really how much information do you need? And this is the important question. If you're building a biometric system, how much information do you need to create unique separation between the population that you're targeting? If you have 5 people, one of them has blonde hair, one of them has black hair, one of them has brown hair, you could build a classifier based on hair color. When you have 1 million people, you need to have what's called multimodal biometrics. And so the trend in biometrics is to keep combining more and more and more until you reach the goal of complete unique separation between your population, target population.
Are we at this point right now? Can we separate people like uniquely?
Nobody knows, because the entire world hasn't been sampled into a database in the same way. So countries are able to do it for biometric ID cards. Fingerprint, people think, is unique, but it really depends how many of the minutiae you're looking at to create what's called a fingerprint. And there was a case that troubled the FBI because they wrongly accused someone because they didn't have a high enough resolution fingerprint. And a lot of the same thing happens with a face. There are many ways to do facial recognition. Some of them look at skin texture a little more than others look at the geometry. Some incorporate a little more of the external facial hair and glasses and things like that. So it's really the trajectory is towards we'll increase the resolution as much as we need to.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of. If there's any questions anymore, you can go to the meeting area, and there's a place where there can be more questions asked. And otherwise, there's your workshop, like where you can talk
come
about
to the workshop.
more deep into the topics. So thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.